Hello, it's Randi Rhodes. Here's a clip from our show, and go to randyrhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.
Mary had a little man.
The fall. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today. Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Do you think Islam is at war with the West?
I think Islam hates us. There's something there that there's a tremendous hatred there. There's a tremendous hatred. We have to get to the bottom of it. There is an unbelievable hatred of us.
In Islam itself?
You're going to have to figure that out, okay? You'll get another Pulitzer, right? But you're going to have to figure that out. But there is a tremendous hatred, and we have to be very vigilant. We have to be very careful, and we can't allow people coming into this country who have this hatred of the United States.
I guess the question is...
And of people that are not Muslim.
I guess the question is there a war between the West and radical Islam, or is there a war between the West and Islam
It's
itself?
radical, but it's very hard to define. It's very hard to separate because you don't know who's who.
You know, he is a dog, okay? He's toxic and he's stupid. And that's a dangerous combination because we went over this. We went over the fact that 2/3 of all extremist activities in this country are committed by white supremacists, not by Islamic extremists. All extremist activity. Now, I just got to say, Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris is on fire. It's been on fire all day. I don't know who did it. I don't know who's got this axe to grind. But it's, interesting that there's some epidemic of Catholic churches, especially in France, where white supremacy and white nationalism is rearing its ugly little head in a big way. Against Catholicism. Some sort of a thing is going on there. And the Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris, the iconic spire that was on top of that building has fallen. The roof has collapsed. But nobody knows who did it yet. And, listen, I'd hate to be at Lloyd's of London today because they probably insure places like the Cathedral of Notre Dame. But the roof has collapsed, and we'll have to wait and see. It's still on fire, so they're trying to put it out. They think they saved the front facade of the building, but we'll see what happens. I sound just like Trump. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But that's all I know. But, Donald Trump feeds these fires. Donald Trump, it's like he makes people fearful. He makes people hate. He makes people actually think that there's some difference in another person's DNA that somehow separates them from the species of humans. And that's just not true. So reacting to all that and Janine Pirro's attack and the attack on the New Zealand mosques by white supremacists, Ilhan Omar went to CARE, the the Council on American Islamic Relations, and said, after 20 minutes of saying, how we try our best. We do our best. It's, but there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of protesters outside. There were about 600 people. Well, there were about 400 people inside this Woodland Hills, California venue. There were about 600 people who couldn't get in, who wanted to get in. And then there were hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of protesters outside that had the most disgusting signs. I mean, just really, just vile things saying, are you a terrorist? And why don't you go back to, why don't you go back to wherever you came from? And Islam Islam hates America. All these things, and so she was reacting to this, and she said, that there were some very interesting people outside. And she said, our community feels like it needs to hide every time something happens. But repeatedly, we have shown them that we are not to be bullied, not to be threatened. We are not to be terrorized. We are strong. We are resilient. We will always show up for ourselves, to be ourselves, because we know we have a right to a dignified existence and a dignified life. She said there are very fascinating people outside, and she said it was very ironic because she said the people entertaining the idea that Islam oppresses women gather outside today to protest a Muslim woman who is a congresswoman. And she said the tragic nightmare of the shooting in New Zealand was not shocking or surprising to many American Muslims. She said, quote, many of us were holding our breath. We were waiting for something like this to happen. Many of us knew that this would get worse because we finally have a leader, a world leader in the White House who publicly says Islam hates us, which I just played you, who fuels hate against Muslims, who thinks it's okay to speak about a faith and a whole community that is dehumanizing and vilifying and doesn't understand, or at least makes us want to think he doesn't understand the consequences that his words have. Now, she went on to say that he does understand the impact of his words and that he does it on purpose. She said he knows that there are people he thinks he can influence to threaten our lives, diminish our influence, but love trumps hate. And then she said, no matter how good we are, and this is the portion of the speech where she said, because some people did something.
It doesn't matter how good you are. If you one day find yourself in a school where other religions are talked about, but when Islam is mentioned, we are only talking about terrorists. And if you say something, you are sent to the principal's office. So to me, I say raise hell, make people uncomfortable. Because here's the truth. Here's the truth. Far too long, we have lived with the discomfort of being a second-class citizen. And frankly, I'm tired of it, and every single Muslim in this country should be tired of it. CARE was founded after 9/11 because they recognized that some people did something and that all of us were starting to lose access to our civil liberties. So you can't just say that today someone is looking at me strange, that I am going to try to make myself look pleasant. You have to say, this person is looking at me strange. I am not comfortable with it. I am going to go talk to them and ask them why. Because that is a right you have.
So her idea of raising hell is to, when somebody stares at you and somebody looks at you like you're, a being from another planet, is not to simply try to make yourself look as pleasant and as unobtrusive and as unaggressive and as docile as possible, but instead to say, why are you looking at me like that? What is it about me that's making you stare at me? Is it my hijab? Is it my clothing? Is it my... Because, I'd like to talk to you. That's her idea of raising hell. Trump had turned that into a meme on Twitter because she said CARE was founded after 9/11 because they recognized that some people did something. And he put up a visual of the buildings burning and put her audio over the burning buildings that were attacked by Saudi Arabians, who Jared Kushner loves. They're best friends, which is just, that's the height of irony here. But I have to say, she needs to be slightly cautious when she speaks, because CARE was not founded after 9/11. CARE was founded in the 90s, but CARE doubled its membership after 9/11, and she has corrected the record. Nancy Pelosi tweeted out to both of them that they need to speak when they speak about 9/11 with reverence. Well, let's just look at what Trump said on 9/11 and find if it was reverent. Go to RandiRhodes.com for the whole thing and a podcast. Buy a stinking podcast.